Good deal, good deal. Just double check a couple things here. All right, so I got people rolling in. If you can also confirm for me, I think I have turned on a feature to take away your names on the attendee list.
Yep.
Are people, that's
Nope,
confirmed?
it says
Okay.
attendee all the
Yeah, all
way
I see
around,
is it.
except for you.
Yep.
Yep.
That's all I see is
Okay.
attendee as well.
All right. So yeah, that's a new button for me that I figured I'd give it a try. And just, since you guys are fellow Teams enthusiasts on my end, when this feature, rolls out to you on my end, I actually see the names of everyone in parentheses. So I'm seeing a bunch of attendees with their names in parentheses. You guys are seeing no name. So hopefully you can see the value of that kind of feature depending on, the public nature of the meeting, whether or not, you want everybody's name listed. So at least you get to experience it as an attendee, and then at some point you'll experience it as a meeting organizer. So that's pretty cool.
Now, is that with a typical Teams license, or is that part of the premium?
That's a good question. Yeah, for me it just appeared, but yeah, my client probably does have all the bells and whistles. So yeah, that's a good question, whether that is a premium feature or not. And almost to some, I think it might have been your point last week, whether it looked like a town hall. Again, it does, and that didn't create it months ago as a town hall, but I'm starting to be suspicious about the changes that I'm seeing. So I'm gonna check into that and see if that attendee masking feature, where that falls in the spectrum of things. So good call out. All right, let me switch over here. So again, I see, we got folks rolling in. I was kind of checking the names, and I feel like most people are, might be a couple new names. So if you are new, you've landed in the Cute for Teams Champions Using Teams Effectively. And you just come here and I try my best to answer questions and just geek out with you on Teams. So you can come off mute and you can use the chat if you have any questions. We're also on LinkedIn as well, if that's a better fit for you. And as I go to the chat, I see a question about polls. Now, actually, the chat there just shows me attendee. So I don't get to see, and that, I don't know, that might be I don't know what that is, but I don't know who's asking this polls question. So again, that's just me for you guys as meeting organizers, kind of knowing how this feature works. So a random attendee is asking about polls, and is there a limit to the number of people for a poll? So there's a limit of 300 for breakout rooms. So I wouldn't think there's a limit to the poll should be able to be used for everyone in the meeting up to, your 1,000 limit that you have on a normal meeting. So I would think the poll would be used for everyone in that meeting, whatever that number is. I'm not aware of a limit on the polls feature, but your typical meeting has 1,000 person limit. You're mentioning 300 for the break rooms. Now, are you, I don't know who this is again, but are you saying that the break room has a 300 person limit, or that the poll has a 300 person limit in a breakout room?
Oh, hi, Ricardo. It's Glenn.
Yeah.
Some people said that they were having trouble with polls, and they had, they had two meetings. One had 17 and one had 700. So this was confusing to me, and I looked it up, and I could not find any number limitation for polls. But on the Microsoft website, I did find a limitation of 300 participants. No,
Participants.
invitees to the meeting, whether they showed up or not, for breakout rooms.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that. And actually, I got to check one thing here on my audio. One sec. too many controls going on. Let me do this guy. About this setting. Go here. I think that is better. Okay, but yeah, yeah. So again, I'm not aware of a limit on polls. Hopefully, that was maybe a different issue that they were having there. I just can't think what that issue might be though. So, and I guess just as I'm thinking about your question, the other thing I'd probably try in that moment if polls wasn't the native polls feature wasn't working out is as a backup, think about using the form as a poll. Either right there in the meeting, there is a button for that, or just firing up a poll, throwing the link in the chat. Not that this is how it should be, but I'm just kind of trying to help from a break glass kind of backup. Okay, for whatever reason, meeting polls aren't working. Let me go fire up a form. At least I can continue and still capture the info, even if it's not as elegant as the native poll feature. So worst case scenario is outside the meeting, making a form and throwing the link into the chat for the people to use. Not at all, what you want to do, but that would work in a pinch.
Okay, go out to Microsoft Forms.
Right, to make a form.
Okay.
And grab the link, put it in there. Again, that's like worst case scenario. If you just really need to get that, poll or info going, that'd be a suggestion.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So again, questions either in the chat or coming off mute. I was going to, as always, there's always something in the week that happens that if nothing else, I come here and I could talk about. And one thing that did happen was related to chats and naming chats. And I think I've mentioned this in this forum before. I know I have a couple of videos on the YouTube channel about it. I am just a big fan of name chats. I know I'm not, I know not everyone is, and I know that because I'm in many chats that will, do I even have an example in here, that will just show the names of the people. And, for some, that's fine. For me, I just, I don't know. I guess that's a pet peeve of mine because I just don't know what the chat is about. If it's a couple of people and me in the chat, that could be useful because when I'm glancing at it, I can see the full name. And let me do that here just so you can know what I'm talking about. I think you guys can all see. No, can nobody see my screen? Actually,
No.
That's right. All right, sorry about that. All right. That's probably much better for you. Like I say, I got a lot of buttons here, so I missed that one. So yeah, typical Teams here. A lot of times I am in chats like this one, right? Where over on the side, I'm seeing Jordan and Esther. And as you can see, two people, that's fine. What I have a pet peeve about is, this and that and her. And then this chat, I have a pet peeve about this. I don't know who's the +3. What kind of conversation is this? Is this, who am I talking to? I got to click into it. Even clicking into it, I've got to, come up here to see who's in this. What are we talking about? All of that stuff. Right. So I am a big proponent of naming chats, even if it's just two people. It does at least have to be a group chat, with at least 3 people total in it for you to name it. Otherwise, it is just a one-to-one chat. But I'm a big proponent of hitting the pencil and, naming. Sometimes I even do regarding and naming the chat. Okay. So I don't know if anybody else feels that way too. On one hand, this is just keeps it nice and neat. lets me see right here in my chat who or what's being talked about. It is similar to email, right? We don't normally do emails that have a no subject and 10 people on them just talking about something in email. So it's, to me, I'm just trying to apply my same rules as email. I'll put a subject on it. But here's some things you may not have thought about on why that's important. One is search. If we're talking about project 123 without a subject line, maybe it'll come up in my search by putting project 123 because somebody said it in the conversation. But certainly by naming the chat, and it probably hasn't search indexed it yet to actually come up in my results, but that chat will eventually be a part of my search results because I've named it as such. So I think it takes a while for that to kind of kick in from a search perspective. So search is one, but the other one is maybe not so subtle, and this is what I came across this week. So here I am talking to Jordan and Nestor. We're having that conversation, and maybe this one is unnamed. Well, now I want to start another conversation with Jordan and Nestor about a different topic, maybe, or maybe this conversation is really old. I don't even remember that me, Jordan, and Nestor had this conversation going. So if I fire up another one with Jordan and Nestor, let's see, I go here. Hopefully it's clear to you. You can see this old message here. It's taking me back to the current Jordan Nestor conversation. I don't get to make a new blank Jordan Nestor conversation here and without naming the chat. Okay. So I need to either name the old one or name the new one. And so naming a chat, you saw I hit the pencil, but also you can do it on the front end. There's that little drop down on the side. I can name it first and then put Jordan and Nestor. And click down here, you'll see it starts with the name. And if you notice, I should have put more text in the other one, but you notice the lack of that old message. This is a brand new, fresh chat because I've named it, and it is separate from, as you can see down here, the other Jordan and Nestor chat. And so, again, I think it's just a good idea to name chats, but it also lets me have multiple conversation threads with the same group of people. Because if I'm just using names, it will always go back to the existing ongoing group chat with those people. And now that's just a big stream of thought, it's probably multiple conversations going on in that group chat. And then of course, being able to use search to distinguish the two. So that is a little subtle thing. And as a rule, as a best practice, I try to do chats that are not just helping myself, but that are helping the people that I'm chatting with. So in the case of, many of my team members, I will preface a lot of my chats with the customer that we're talking about, customer ABC, and then, whatever the topic is. And the main thing being, and why I try to stay succinct with this and put the customer on the front end, is because we got to remember that as that person is looking at their chats, if it's a long subject, they are going to only see a few characters first, put the most important stuff up front, help them figure out what this is about. That my teammates, often have dozens of customers. So help them on the front end see, okay, this is someone chatting with me on account team X that deals with customer Y. Help them out there. Also remember that this chat thing is going to appear in their feed. Again, where they will have limited characters that they'll see initially, whether they're in their feed or whether it's the pop-up on the end. So how much information can I give them on that pop-up in their feed that's going to let them know what this info is, whether it's worth clicking on and diving into at the moment or saving for later. And then, imagine your teammates having 20 new chats over here. I don't know, I don't know how busy my different team members are. So I just envision them having 20, 30 chats, unread chats over here, and they've got to come here and figure out what to read next. I want to make mine look as nice and easy as possible. If it was me and I had 20 chats, I would not go quickly to the one with where was the one with the 3 or 10 people in it, where I don't really know what it is. That's not going to register to me as a priority. But if I see a customer that I recognize or some title of a project that I recognize, that's going to help me prioritize viewing it. So just like we do with our subject lines, hopefully you're making great subject lines in your email to make sure people open them. It's the same thing with our chats. Let's make good subjects in our chats to help. We are all, drowning in notifications and whatnot. And so whatever we can do to help each other with those, filtering through those, I think is useful. So if you aren't doing them today, start trying out subject lines on your chats and see how that goes for folks. So anybody else a proponent of the chat subject lines? Or did I just blow everybody's mind with this one?
No, that's a great tip. And
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of group chats, but it's definitely, I do try to name a group chat, but I don't know that a lot of people do, like you said. And so it will definitely be something that I will mention at our next training that I provide among our users. It was a great reminder and a great tip.
Yeah.
And sorry,
Okay,
go ahead, because I looked up the hide attendee names in webinars, and that's a premium feature.
Okay. Thanks for
I
looking
knew,
that up for us.
yeah, I knew I had read that
Yeah.
because we're using a set of pilot users right now for the premium, so I try to stay informed.
Right. Okay. So yeah, another premium feature. I was going to ask you though. You said you're not in a lot of group chats. Does that mean that you are mainly in channel chats, or do you just have a lot of one-to-one chats?
A lot of one-to-one and meeting chats.
Okay.
Yeah, because whenever I am the scheduler of meetings, I always ask everybody to use the meeting chat if it's, for the same group of people and for the same topic.
Right.
Obviously, instead of starting a whole different chat.
Yeah. One tip there, I do that often too. I do notice though, there are certainly some people can set policies depending on, if you're working with an external org or anything, they can set policies where once that meeting is over, people are kicked out of the chat. I don't know if you've ever seen that or experienced that. So because of that kind of policy, you can't always rely on using the meeting chat forever. Now inside your org, you probably know whether that policy is there or not, and could rely on that. But if you got some guests or something, they may or may, depending on the org's policy, they may or may not get kicked out of the meeting chat once the meeting's over. So
Right.
just keep that in mind.
Yeah, or if the meeting was forwarded to them and they weren't actually on your recipient list from your scheduler.
Right. Now, in both of those, either case, whether you've continued a conversation within the meeting or whether you've made a new meeting, one of the questions that might be coming in you guys' mind is, I make these group chats and throw people in that may or may not want to be a part of the conversation. Remember, you as a person in a chat have this option of leaving a chat, whether that's the meeting chat of a previous meeting or just the group chat period. So keep that in mind. I've certainly had some big group chats created where it was clear someone was like, no, I'm not interested in this one, or this one's getting chatty or something. So you always have the option of leaving, which is, an advantage maybe to having that same conversation in email. It's a little harder to get yourself out of an email thread. We do have the ignore button in Outlook that basically kind of auto deletes it new messages. That's probably the closest you can get from an Outlook perspective, but it's not a good, elegant way to lead that thread other than getting on the thread and saying, hey, take me off of this. But here you can quietly, elegantly, with no fuss, just leave a chat. It'll be shown, at the bottom that you've left. In fact, I'll leave this one. Leave the conversation. You still have access to the chat history. So what that's telling me is, one, everybody in this chat is going to see that Ricardo left the chat. It's telling me you can't send messages because you're not a member of the chat. That makes sense. I'm not going to get any more either. But you do notice I do keep the chats, the messages that I previously had access to. Leaving a chat is not the same as obliterating everything that that you previously read, and that's important or convenient, because now if this was interesting for a while, useful for a while, and then for some reason I wanted to leave it, at least I have the benefit of the chat that I can then still search for, and there was any useful info in the chat, it should still come up in search and things like that. So same here, you'll notice I left it. It's still over here. If you're like me and like to keep this as clean as possible too, then what you'll want to do here is I would suggest hide the chat versus deleting it. So hiding is just kind of taking it out of your recent view here. And if I hide something, but I was still a part of the chat, if the chat fired up again, it would just come right back. And it'll still be part of my search and everything. So just some tips about the world of the private chat area, and some etiquette and suggestions there. It's good stuff. Yeah, that was something that just kind of came up this week. Thought I'd share there. Anything else burning? Anybody came to talk about or ask about, or any other tips in this area? I'd love to hear some real world tips from you all if you got them on
Actually,
chatting.
I do have a. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, great. I do have a question about. I was wondering if you could speak to the integration of Teams with SharePoint, and just what your experience has been with that. What are some of your best practices? Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, every team is I like to say is powered by SharePoint, and that anything you're doing with files in that team, SharePoint is the power behind it. So that Files tab takes us to an area that is storing our files, and it's giving it a nice Teams look, but under the covers it is SharePoint. So we click that, we can open it up in SharePoint and see it that way as well. I also like to say, if you're a SharePoint user, you've got your SharePoint tricks. Those are still apply, especially once you come all the way over to SharePoint. You can still do all the things, all the fancy, elegant things that you like to do in SharePoint, even though that site was created by a team. So from that perspective, that's one of the main things when you ask about the team SharePoint kind of collaboration, that's one of the things I like, is that Teams uses SharePoint but doesn't cripple it as a result. It's a full-blown SharePoint site. There's connections there by way of the every channel in the team is going to get its own folder in that document library, but it's not crippling it. There's still you can still do other libraries in the SharePoint site. You can still do all your SharePoint, SharePoint things here as well. And in fact, there are still some features actually that I would like. The main one, for instance, is version history. You got to come over to SharePoint to get that. But again, notice it is still there. Just because it's Teams doesn't mean it took away those features. All your features like with Power Automate and Power Apps and things like that are still there. And nice little convenient button to try to get you back to the Teams area. That's relatively new. Did it take me? Yeah, it took me to the right spot. Yep. So yes, I do like it because SharePoint is a very powerful document management tool. So, many people would probably be happy with the fact that, well, Teams can just store my documents in a normal way. I can see them and open them and edit them. But to know that Teams is really not just storing them, but putting them in a high-end document management system where if I needed to get at some of the power, power of all of that, if it's not already surfaced in Teams, I just go over to SharePoint and get full advantage of that. So I like it for that. Any particular SharePoint issue you've been having that maybe sparked that question?
Well, I think so. I have seen the uptake tendency for groups when when we're working on a project to use Teams as a means of discussing the status of a project or whatever is pending at the
Right.
moment.
Right.
But I think the issue that I've noticed is when you have to move from the chat to SharePoint,
Mhm.
it's you're essentially you're going from one environment to another.
Right.
And for me, like, as I think about the ease of access and usability, I think of the disconnect that could cause for folks who are uh, resistant to the uptake
Mhm.
or to the adoption. Um, and so I think for me, like that's the piece that I've been trying to see if there's a workaround, like maybe within SharePoint, if a Teams chat could exist.
Yeah. So the back and forth of the chat versus so the one thing I guess I'd say there is the one nice scenario now that we're in the Teams world is that if I am on this project for the chat, for status, and we need a place to store documents, there's a world where I could not even ever mention the word SharePoint because in a lot of cases this gets it done, right? All our chat and everything Teams related, and then when it's time for files, I go to the files area. I don't have to call that SharePoint, and I got really full access here. Obviously, see it, open it, and stay in Teams. And edit it and stay in Teams. And that's editing with real time co-authoring, right? So if somebody else is in the doc, I can stay in Teams, they can be in it, So for a large amount of scenarios, I'd never have to leave Teams for my document work. And so that can be a good thing. Sometimes where that doesn't work well is when the team has already been, but they were kind of deep in SharePoint before Teams came around, and so there's still that muscle that they're kind of kicking to. But there's a lot of
I think the thing that the immediate kind of thought that comes to mind right now in your example, which they're great examples, I really appreciate it. But the thing that comes up is that I could see that being helpful if it's one topic focus. But if the conversation is about multiple components of one project, so for example, there might be component that is privacy related. There might be a component that is sort of need to get information out as soon as possible, and then another one may be sort of just a different domain, so
yeah.
that when you're working with those different domains within SharePoint, you know where they're located versus within Teams, where would I be able to create that distinction?
Yeah. And so as you were talking, my thought is hopefully they are making a new channel for every one of those new domains, because with each channel, like in the case of this District 9, this road safety team, they're talking about audit planning and the delivery, and they got some hitting channels about recommended actions and survey. And so they can make a new channel for each domain or topic, each channel gets its own files area, which in the SharePoint world is a new folder. So if it was pure SharePoint, I would think that that's what they would do. They might make new sub teams, but they're probably at least making new document libraries. And we're getting that same effect here in Teams without leaving Teams, and with a nice, navigation between those different topics. So if it's the same people working on that, just different, as you say, domains or topics, new channel for each channel gets a nice little files area. And I'm always just looking for ways to keep everybody in Teams and not have to leave Teams at all. And that might be one approach, is just to start making more use of channels.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you for that. That was helpful.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm glad everybody could join us today. We're a little bit over time here. But we'll be back in actually, I'll check we'll be back in a couple of weeks. I know that the holidays coming up are might affect our calendar, our meeting times here, but just keep watching aka.ms/Q for Teams. It'll always mention the next date of the next meeting. So great conversation today, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and check out the blog for more content.